Do you believe you can win? And what's your plan to defeat Rachel Notley?
Well, I believe I can win, or else I wouldn't be doing this. I do believe I'm the best candidate. I'm the best experienced. I've got the best resume, and frankly, I'm hoping that people aren't looking for somebody that tells great stories. I hope they're looking for a leader that actually has good experience, that has the capability and the vision to take us to the next level in Alberta, which to me means more autonomy, more personal rights, and more freedom to choose your destiny, whether you're a community or an individual. Rachel Notley, well, I almost had her. My son had just died. I went into a leadership debate that, frankly, I don't even remember. And then, wow. And there was another party. We had two big parties. And of course, the PC was the dominant party. And we came from behind with only two MLAs that were sitting there. And we got the biggest ever, 20 seats. We almost had them. So this time, there's no other party. Mm-hmm. There's no Jim Prentice, that juggernaut. There's just Brian Jean that wins local elections. Stands up for people. Cares. And Rachel Notley, I worked with her for 2.5 years. Every day I asked her questions. And the first question I asked was about PSTs. I asked it twice, just to confirm she wasn't going to bring in a PST. There's a strategy to politics. It's not just get up every day and think about what's on your mind and make up stories as you go along. And there's a strategy. I've been working on this for a long time. This equalization issue was something I brought up in 2016, started in 2015. We need to open the Constitution or else we're going to be in a constitutional crisis. And we don't need to get to that point.
Adam Soos here for Rebel News with our latest UCP leadership.com coverage. I'm joined by someone who needs no introduction, one of the front runners in the UCP leadership race and MLA for Fort McMurray Lac La Biche, Brian Jean. Brian, thanks so much for taking this opportunity to come chat with me, share your perspective and your sort of pitch for why you're the best person to lead the province moving forward.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me in. I'm just always happy to be here in Alberta. Beautiful day. Gorgeous.
So I kind of wanted to start and go back a little bit to the head-to-head with Jason Kenney. I'm sure you've probably thought back to that. Now you're sort of going for his job. What goes through your head when you enter another leadership race like this?
The first thing is that, when I united the parties with Jason Kenney, I resigned my seat in the hope, like all Albertans had hope, that he would come back to Alberta and do an amazing job managing something so significant as our lives, as we've learned over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
A significant job that makes significant decisions. And I had high hopes for him. My businesses, my home, my family in Fort McMurray would have done a lot better. So I wanted him to succeed. And that's the first thing that people need to know. That's why I stepped aside in part, to go back, take care of my family. I just had 3 deaths in the family and had to take care of their estates and the businesses that they own and operated. And it was a very busy time in my life. A new child, my wife and child had to be medevac. They were medevac to Edmonton. They barely survived. A lot of things going on. So, stepping back was what I thought was going to happen permanently for me. And then over the last couple of years, what I've seen, frankly, was that the NDP were going to win an overwhelming majority. And that's why I got back involved, because I knew we had to renew the party. And I knew one way or the other, and I think most people understand what I mean by one way or the other. I think one way or the other, we would have renewed and rejuvenated the party, because look at what's been going on now. Everybody's looking at the UCP and saying, "Oh, what's gonna happen?" They're buying memberships, they're getting excited. We're getting all excited, and you know what? I think actually the UCP has a better chance today to win than it did a year ago today, or 2 years ago, or 3 years ago. And that's what I'm concerned with. I don't want my life, my city, to be shut down by Justin Trudeau and Rachel Notley.
Right.
And I'm going to do whatever I can to give us more autonomy here in Alberta for Albertans. Not for the government, but for the people.
Okay. So I was going to ask this later, but there is kind of a rational segue here. I think for most people out there, everything you went through in your personal life, people generally understand that you stepped away from politics. Many people wondering now, let's say you don't win the leadership. Is your plan to stay on, be part of the team, fight Rachel Notley, and stand up for Alberta, or to sort of step aside again?
Well, no, my intention, nobody goes into this thinking they're going to do it for a couple of months and back out. I've significantly changed my life to come back here and do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
The sacrifice of my family and my friends to help me do this is big.
Yeah.
My intention is to do exactly what you said and deal with Rachel Notley and more so Justin Trudeau, because I've spent 10 years in Ottawa and I know what needs to be done there. I figured out pretty early that what I wanted to do for Albertans couldn't be done in Ottawa.
Right.
No matter how hard I tried, it had to be done from here. And that's why I came back, and that and the death of my son, so I could fix the medical system. But do I want to stay? Well, if you had your boss not talk to you for 4 or 5 months in the hallways as you pass by you, you'd sort of get the hint after a while that you're not wanted. And I stepped aside also because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't a distraction.
Right.
Right. So, and I think that's what politicians need to do, is when they have the clear message that they're to leave, they should leave.
Okay.
And let people start over, because it's not about them, it's about the people and the party. And we need a fresh start for the UCP. We need to get it rejuvenated and the people excited about it. And that's what we're trying to do by selling memberships. That's why people are buying memberships and getting involved.
Now, some of what you talked there with Jason Kenney, I know some of this is sort of under investigation, but with some of the stuff with allegations of kamikaze candidates, some of the conversations around sort of MLAs being thrust or acclaimed in seats, some of that was sort of an affront to the grassroots guarantee that was given by Jason Kenney. Do you feel like sort of, obviously COVID-19 restrictions and all this stuff contributed to the end of his leadership, but do you feel like the sort of entitlement and insider politics were there right out of the gate?
I would just like to say that you can see what people are going to do in the future by what they've done in the past. And am I a grassroots guy? Absolutely. And why can I say that with confidence? Because I was able to keep my caucus together. Nobody quit. Nobody was fired from caucus. I was able to keep it together, even though it was a pretty wild time, against Rachel Notley, and bring us to a 95% vote on confidence on getting together and unifying the party. And I stepped down, resigned my seat because that 95% vote said so. And I didn't try to delay the vote. I didn't try to suppress the vote or convince people to not vote so I could keep my job. I did that because I'm a grassroots guy and I believe in the grassroots. And I think a party like ours needs to make sure that our policy is developed by the people. And the more people that get involved, the better it is. And stop trying to restrict people's involvement, but encourage it and empower people to be involved. And that's how you get a party that's going to win Albertans' hearts and minds way into the future. Decades and decades of good governance. As long as we get our own model right, we've got to stop talking about the past and all the things that happened. And, I was questioned by the RCMP 4 times too.
Yeah.
A lot of people were. I didn't want to be involved in that situation. I was thrust upon it by no action of mine or my team. But notwithstanding that, what we need to do is recognize that we are rejuvenating and renewing this party so that we can win the next election. And that's what I'm going to focus on. And I'm going to do whatever I can to build a team, just like I did last time.
Right.
Bring us all together, unify us, but not just unify the party or the caucus, because that's important, sure. But more important than that is unify Albertans, because if we don't, we're in big trouble.
Now, just one more thing looking to the past, and then we'll talk about plans for the future. Part of the big divide that was generated was the response to COVID-19. We've talked sort of ad nauseum about what happened, some of the rights violations, some of the arrests, all of that. But particularly, if you're vying to be the leader, what would you do to ensure that you don't make the same mistakes? And what do you feel that the sort of key mistakes that Jason Kenney made in response to the COVID-19 pandemic were?
Well, so where do I start? The last 2 years, a lot of people followed the rest of the world, and I think what we have to recognize is the government did violate our rights. There's no question they did. The Health Act is not supreme over our Bill of Rights here in Alberta, and it actually says so.
Yeah,
like it says right in there. This is not to be subservient to the Health Act, and yet judges in Alberta have said so. So I'm going to make sure that in the future we bind governments so they can't do this again. And how I'm going to do that, and I'm actually the only candidate that's talked about that, and I don't know why others don't. But this isn't just about me being premier and saying no lockdowns. This is about me being premier and saying I'm listening. You're telling me no lockdowns. You're also telling me that nobody in the future should be able to lock down. So what I'm going to do is change the Emergency Act legislation everywhere it is, and there's several pieces, and make sure that if there is the intrusion by government on our rights in the future, that there is a price to pay for it. And the price to pay for it will include no cabinet secrets, so we get to see why they made that decision, and that makes a big difference on what decision they make, by the way. Also, that if there is too much intrusion, we go to a judicial review, a public inquiry, and we hold people accountable for that. Because, listen, we are a shining light to the rest of the world, and what happened here with arresting pastors and shutting down churches is unacceptable.
Now, most candidates probably agree that there were some mistakes made. Would you commit, and some candidates have, some have kind of waffled on this, would you commit to ending the ongoing prosecution from COVID-19 restrictions?
Yes.
Categorically, for all, yeah.
Yes, and I would look at opportunities to remove that from their records. I think that what our government has done in a lot of cases is just totally unacceptable. Religious persecution. I was telling you I went to Prairie for 4 years back in the day, and back in the 70s, actually riding horses and stuff. That was a lot of fun. I know how important it is to protect the rights of people that have religious views, because I need to make sure that we do that so they protect ours in the future.
Right.
And even if you're not religious, you want to have those rights. You want to have those individual opportunities to do what you want. That's why it's all about autonomy for me. Autonomy for Albertans is really about personal choice and being able to make that personal choice. And is it a conservative value? People say, is it a conservative value? Well, of course. To make a personal choice, you have to have more money in your pockets. That's why I've suggested the 30 cents off a liter or so off gas and diesel in Alberta, because Albertans shouldn't pay royalties on something they own. That's why I've suggested the transmission and distribution reduction of bills by 1/3, just with interest income from our surpluses, which won't cost us any more in the budget. But why have I suggested that? Because Albertans are really hurting, and our long-term debt isn't due for quite some time, and so we can use that to alleviate the burden on Albertans, because governments, both NDP and PC, overbuilt our infrastructure there, and we're paying the price. And I want to see that stopped as well. We've got to stop overbuilding capacity to such an extent that it's not efficient.
Yeah. So another sort of, I don't know, this speaks to an extent to the UCP, perhaps some of the entitlement, perhaps this is a hangover from the NDP, but Dina Hinshaw, the Chief Medical Officer of Health, just got a $600,000 salary, and $230,000 of that, almost $250,000, was a bonus throughout COVID-19. That's concerning in and of itself, but the finance minister, Travis Taves, one of the other leadership candidates, claims he doesn't really know anything about it and it needs to be stopped. Nobody knows why she got this money, even people who were in office at the time. How do we sort of fix that when they're closing emergency rooms and shuttering hours and limiting access in communities?
Speaking of Lac La Biche, they're closing on weekends now on the hospital. It's unacceptable. We brought that forward. It's disgusting. That's enough to, the 2 bonuses for the 2 top people is enough to buy a house.
Yeah.
Like, enough to buy a house. Do you know how many Albertans would love to own their own house?
Yeah.
It's disgusting. And, I don't want to get into particulars with previous cabinet ministers. I think that, either they didn't say what was on their mind, or they weren't strong enough to make a change. And frankly, either one is not acceptable to me. The key is, though, let's go forward. And I think it's all about leadership. So who do you want to be your leader? Do you want somebody that can really, really talk and tell great stories? Do you want somebody that has been a politician all their life and nothing else? Or do you want somebody that's been a business person, a litigator in the courts in Alberta, a member of parliament for 10 years in Ottawa, and 3 years as an MLA, and 2 of that as a leader of the opposition, and a person that was prepared and showed in history, because history repeats itself, that they are prepared to sacrifice themselves and their best interests for the people.
Right.
And to my mind, I don't think there's a competition there. From my mind, I think they're all good people, but are they the people that you want to lead? How you lead best is because you've experienced the pain and suffering of the people, so you can actually do what they need done, and recognize that, for instance, losing a son or having a house burnt down or flooded in the space of 4 years put a different perspective on things for me.
You talked about leadership there. Do you believe that with MLAs like Todd Lowen and Drew Barnes being shown the door, and a bunch of people who are likely to carry on with the UCP sort of being instrumental in some of what we've seen over the last 2 years, do you believe that new leadership can really sort of bring those people back into the fold and reformat the UCP towards being a Alberta strong and free party?
Listen, people thought I was swimming to a sinking ship back in the Wild Rose days. I had 4 MLAs. We just had a floor crossing by Danielle Smith and Rob Anders, and for cabinet seats, by the way. and which didn't come out to fruition, and the people spoke on that. And I can forgive her for that, but I'm not going to forget that decision was made. And decisions are far more important than the ability to communicate, because somebody has to make the decisions. I believe in empowering people. I have a leadership model that I follow fairly closely, and it's about finding consensus at the start with the team and moving forward in a particular direction where everybody knows where we're going and they buy into it. Secondly, to find doers, people that'll get things done. Yeah. And then thirdly, to get obstacles out of those doers' path, either money, legislation, or regulation, or people, whatever it may be. And the fourth is to make sure that you have open, transparent, and accountable communication with the people that you're serving, whether it be the consumer, or in this case, Albertans, right. Meaning that they are brought along with you so they understand, and they can even refine the process as they go, because I don't mind changing things if it's better for the people. And I think governments sometimes are ideological, just like our education system right now. We've gone left, we've gone right. Like, why are we putting politics in it at all? Why is there an ideological base in our education for our children? It's the most important thing we have. If we get education right, so many things get better. If we get it wrong, well, and we've been getting it wrong lately.
Yeah. So speaking of ideological leadership, I now want to jump to Alberta's response to federal politics, particularly Justin Trudeau. The separatist sentiment in Alberta is as high as it's ever been. It's higher than Quebec right now. Justin Trudeau largely to blame for that. We've seen ranchers attacked. We've seen farmers attacked. Ethical oil from Alberta attacked categorically. Is there a way to get Alberta back to the table where people are satisfied? Do you think that separatist sentiment can decline, or are we sort of on a trajectory now?
I blame politicians for this, because sometimes politicians, and particular politicians, will stand up and say, we're going to do this, and get people mad and riled up. And, I've had people talk about bringing out their guns in some of these town halls I've had across the province. And I'm just like, sir, that's just not acceptable. Like, that's not acceptable. We're under the rule of law here, but people are getting others riled up right across the country, and especially here in Alberta right now and over the last few years, and telling them fairy tales. Fairy tales, untruths, things that sound wonderful, houses made of candy and all sorts of wonderful things that are not true. The only way we can solve this issue that we have is to open up the Constitution. Even Danielle Smith over the last 2 nights has admitted that. And I thank her for that, because she sees the light as well. Section 46 of the Constitution lays out the path, and the reference case that was given to us by the Supreme Court of Canada for the people of Quebec lays out the path. And we appreciate that, because now Albertans can pursue the path, not of separation, but of negotiation. Why would we press the nuclear button before we actually sit down at the table and talk? And this is a formal legal process that we can do. And you know what gives us the opportunity to do that? What a beautiful area.
Yeah, it's pretty stunning.
What gives us the opportunity to do that is the 62% mandate from the people on equalization. And you know what? Equalization was the question brought up by me as a Wildrose leader way back in the day, 2015 or so, 2016. And I got 3 economists from across the country to do that, to tell Canadians how much more we were giving than receiving. And you know what? Canadians recognize that now. Albertans recognize that now. Even NDP members recognize that now. That's why we're having this discussion. But I want to be clear to Albertans. This was not about equalization. The whole time, equalization was just a crowbar, a tool to open up the Constitution so we could have discussions about Section 91 and Section 92 and get to the table. That's what it's all about. So Jason Kenney followed through with the referendum as I started, and the Wildrose. We had a great team. Building teams is a good thing. And then did nothing with it. That's the truth, nothing. To me, that would have been the first thing, and that's why I've said on day number 1, I'm going to give notice under Section 46 and specify to every single Premier and the Prime Minister that we want to open up constitutional negotiations. And people say, no, you can't do that. Well, why not? I've been negotiating all my life. I was a lawyer negotiating. I've been doing it at the business counter as well. This is what we need to do when we have a difference of opinion. This is the rule of law that governs Canada, and nobody can force us to be in a relationship we don't want to be in.
So do you think that is sort of the happy medium? Some people saying, let's just let's just hit the nuclear button, like you're saying. And I get that sentiment. We saw the massive Dutch farmer rebellions. Trudeau wants to bring that here now. People have been saying a better deal, equalization, like you mentioned, since back in the Wild Rose days, back in the firewall letter, in fact. And we've had people all this time getting frustrated. Justin Trudeau has worsened that situation. Do you feel like you've sort of struck the balance between the nuclear option and just talking and writing letters?
Yes, I have. And I have because I understand what is necessary as an MP for 10 years, as a lawyer and a constitutional lawyer that, litigated in the courts on constitutional and charter issues. I understand how important those are to people. And you don't really understand how important AHS is until you lose a son or a daughter. No, all of these issues are so important, but we have to do it the legal way because that's the only way it's going to stick. Talking about, I like the idea, okay, we're going to stop paying federal taxes or we're going to start collecting all the taxes. Well, Quebec does not collect their federal taxes. Quebecers have to do 2 tax returns. People keep talking about, oh, we're going to collect our own taxes. You cannot do that under the current rules. The only way you can do that is to open up the Constitution. That's the only way. You have to renegotiate all of those terms. Same as agriculture. Like, let's face it, this 30% fertilizer thing, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. We're challenging them. Tanker ban on the West Coast, we're challenging that.
Yeah.
That's prejudicial to 2 provinces. We're going to take them to court. Why? Because I know that's the proper method to get things done and work. And usually, what percent of cases ever get to trial? 1%. Do you know why? Because they negotiate on the path. They get a settlement because they know their downside. And Section 91 and 92 talks about partnerships.
Yeah.
And we're in a partnership. That doesn't mean they're our boss.
Yeah.
Justin Trudeau's just been a bully, pushing us around. I've been dealing with bullies my whole life, red hair and all that in northern Alberta. I don't like bullies. That's not my thing. So bullies get my back up, and we need to make sure that we deal with it properly, though, because if we lose this opportunity, right now we've got the mandate.
Hello.
Hello. If we lose this mandate, if we lose this opportunity, if it's done wrong, and if somebody's hovering around the nuclear button, all that's going to happen is no investment is going to come to Alberta. None. Zero. Zip. We're going to be like Quebec is and has been for the last 20 years since that vote. And we can't do that. So let's just follow the rule of law, let people know that we are going to follow the rule of law, and we're going to encourage businesses to come to Alberta because they're going to want Albertans to work in them. That's we have the best people in the world right here. Best opportunities and best future of anywhere on the planet. I believe that, and it's only going to get better.
Speaking of the best people in the world, I want to talk a little bit about the energy sector, particularly Alberta oil. We talked a little bit about this last night at the Frontrunners debate, but for anyone paying attention, compared to countries like Iran, Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, both in terms of environmental concerns and human rights on a very fundamental level, Alberta oil is just better. In fact, we agreed last night that us exporting oil to the world would probably be one of the best things we could do, both for the environment and for human rights. There seems to be, though, a sort of apologetic effort on behalf of Alberta oil, whether it's saying we need carbon taxes, or even Danielle Smith, who very much resonates with the Freedom crowd, talking net zero talking points.
I remember getting hit by Graham Thompson years ago in 2012 when I talked about how the science wasn't settled on climate change. And I can tell you what I've come around full circle on that. I am now probably the first and early adopter of thinking that we can hit a net zero target and we can get there faster than anywhere else. And I'll tell you why I believe that. Number one has been the incredible innovation that we have seen among our entrepreneurs and in the business community. And we as conservatives have always believed that technology was going to be the answer. And I can tell you, it is the answer.
Wow. I couldn't believe that she said that.
Yeah.
Net zero. You know what that's going to do? That's going to send our carbon tax bill 12 times higher. 12 times. I can't even believe she's talking like that. But the problem is when leaders actually talk about things, they should stick to that path. And they should understand where they want to go, because that's where we need to go. Not, I'm going to go over, the flavor of the day is net zero, and I'm going to go there. The flavor of the day is, this premier that is so incredible that I need to give up my job and walk across the floor. That kind of thing, we have to stop doing that kind of thing and look at people that actually don't follow through and don't lead properly. And anyways, it's a decision that Albertans have to make. I know that I'm ready for leadership. I know I'm ready to be the premier of this great province. I'm from Fort McMurray. If anybody understands the oil and gas industry, when I was 5 years old, my parents had a gift store.
Yeah.
And on the main street in Franklin, we still have it actually, not the store, but the building. And I used to go out with a shovel and little plastic bags and dig oil sands off the sides of the river there and stick it in these little bags, and we'd staple tags on the top. We had a printing company, and we'd staple tags on the top and sell that for 50 cents or 80 cents or whatever. So I've been working with oil sands for a long time. My dad worked on the first plant site there too, and my brothers. So I saw it grow from the ground up, and I will tell you, there is no better oil and gas industry in the world than what we do here in Canada. We do it better than anybody else. And we have to stop apologizing, though. We do that as Canadians. Like, let's be honest. We go around the world apologizing for being Canadians, which I don't understand that, because we are the politest people. We are kind. We are the most generous on the planet. Albertans in particular give more to charities than anywhere else on the planet. I don't know why we apologize so much. I'm going to stop, make sure the government stops. I'm not going to do war rooms and things like that, because I don't think we need to do that. We have rules in place right now, and we can follow those rules without spending a whole bunch of money and throwing it away. But we have to get to it. We have to get to it. And I'm ready to get to it. And I think I can put together a great team that will get it done. And we will make sure that we follow the policies as laid out by the UCP members. And that's why I want so many members to get involved, because if we have members involved and we get the right policy, we will move in the right direction. And that means Albertans will continue to reward us for doing so. I'm going to do some cleanup too, by the way. I want you to know that one of the first things I want to do is an Accountability Act, and make sure that government, leadership races, nominations are fair. It shouldn't be leaders picking people and saying that's it. It should be the grassroots picking them, the constituents themselves. And I showed that when I was the leader of the Wild Rose, that the leader wasn't going to go around picking people. And I think we have to get back to allowing the people themselves to be in charge of our party, which means they'll be in charge of the leader, and the leader in turn will be in charge of the cabinet to get the things done for the people of Alberta. Awesome. And that's the way it should work.
Couple more before we wrap up.
For sure.
They can be.
I hope we don't get run over on this.
No,
thing.
I think we're all right.
We almost lost our cameraman once.
I know, a couple times. So I guess first off, all of these sort of carbon tax policies, net zero schemes, whatever it may be, do you believe that they're going to change the weather, or do you believe that they're largely money grabs?
Come on, that's so silly. They're not going to change the weather. Only God can do that. Listen, we need to be. I fished up at Uranium City. I don't know if you've ever been up there, but Uranium City used to be a community of about 5,000. Then, the market dropped in uranium in Canada, and it moved down to about 110 people. I've been up there fishing quite a number of times, and I've seen Uranium City on the Saskatchewan side of Lake Athabasca, where there's just tons and tons of equipment that has worked with uranium thrown in the water, which is the largest lake in Saskatchewan and Alberta. Even though only a third of it's in Alberta. We have a tremendous resource right there, and we have a uranium mine that has not been reclaimed right on the side of the water with equipment in the water. Like, that's the kind of thing we should be paying attention to. And the air and the water that we drink, I'm into that. Let's make sure we protect it for future generations too. But let's not do these pie in the sky schemes that somebody in Paris thinks is going to solve their problems. Until China and India actually seriously come to the table, the 1.5% that we represent, all we can really do, and the best thing we can really do, is not kill our own industry, but send our great technology and innovation and research to these other countries, developing countries, for free. And say, here you go. Like, solve your own problems, and we'll help you. But with technology, not with money.
Speaking of European pie in the sky schemes, the World Economic Forum has, I think it's beyond a conspiracy now, exerted a massive influence.
It's not a conspiracy when you put it in writing and make videos.
So it's beyond deniable that they have a massive influence, and they're trying to grow that influence. What would you do to counteract that?
Well, I find it repulsive, first of all. I don't know if you've seen any of my posts, but if you haven't, go to my Facebook page. You'll recognize how serious I am about it. People that suggest that they should not own property and should rent, well, who's going to own it? I bet they are. That's not going to happen in Alberta if I'm in control. I've already said that I'm going to ban the City of Calgary, the City of Edmonton from participating, and from anybody that receives Alberta funds. They can't receive Alberta funds anymore if they're going to continue doing that and being a party of that. AHS is a member. they're not going to be a member anymore.
Yeah.
I reject that kind of theory completely. I believe in individual ownership. I believe in people being able to own their own homes. I'm going to encourage the ATB to be more competitive with their rates so that we can have more home ownership here, that we can have more businesses that are successful here. We take a little bit more risk, but our risk portfolio is fine and very good actually with the ATB, but we can lessen that risk portfolio by helping Albertans and putting more money into the economy, which will create more wealth for all of us. And the ATB's mandate should not be to be, quite frankly, using slush funds to advertise for specialty events that their senior management think are important. They should not be a profit center at all, and they should not be having the flexibility to do things like that that are not constructive and not in the best interest of Albertans. And truly, what I believe is that their mandate should be to make the other banks more competitive, but do it aggressively. And in Alberta, we should have the cheapest money available with the best terms so that people can actually make money.
Do you believe you can win? And what's your plan to defeat Rachel Notley?
Well, I believe I can win, or else I wouldn't be doing this. I do believe I'm the best candidate. I'm the best experienced. I've got the best resume, and frankly, I'm hoping that people aren't looking for somebody that tells great stories. I hope they're looking for a leader that actually has good experience, that has the capability and the vision to take us to the next level in Alberta, which to me means more autonomy, more personal rights, and more freedom to choose your destiny, whether you're a community or an individual. Rachel Notley, well, I almost had her. My son had just died. I went into a leadership debate that, frankly, I don't even remember. And then, wow. And there was another party. We had two big parties. And of course, the PC was the dominant party. And we came from behind with only 2 MLAs that were sitting there. And we got the biggest ever, 20 seats. We almost had them. So this time, there's no other party. Mm-hmm. There's no Jim Prentice, that juggernaut. There's just Brian Jean that wins local elections. Stands up for people. Cares. And Rachel Notley, I worked with her for 2.5 years. Every day I asked her questions. And the first question I asked was about PSTs. I asked it twice, just to confirm she wasn't going to bring in a PST. There's a strategy to politics. It's not just get up every day and think about what's on your mind and make up stories as you go along. And there's a strategy. I've been working on this for a long time. This equalization issue was something I brought up in 2016, started in 2015. We need to open the Constitution or else we're going to be in a constitutional crisis. And we don't need to get to that point. It's just like a marriage crisis. We can sit down beforehand, renegotiate the terms of our relationship, and find a solution. I think Canada is the greatest country in the world. I think it can be greater. And the more autonomy each province has and each citizen in those provinces have, the better off Canada is going to be. And right now we have a tremendous opportunity. And I see that opportunity. I know many of the leaders and talk to many of the leaders across our great country now, and the premiers are ready to renegotiate the terms of Confederation on the basis of healthcare alone. Now they're already joining us in the pipeline appeal in the courts, and I'm hoping that they'll join us on the tanker ban appeal. And what we have to do is keep the federal government busy, making sure that they understand that we're not going to let them walk across our fence anymore. So. But we need somebody that understands it, not just somebody that talks. And I do understand the legal process, and we can get it done. It's just going to take time, and we've been working on it now for 5 years. And it's one strategy and the only strategy that will actually work.
Well, Brian, I want to thank you so much for taking this time to speak with us, sharing your perspective and your vision for Alberta moving forward. For everyone at home, I want to encourage you to go to ucpleadership.com to check out all of our coverage. I hope you enjoyed this report. Thanks so much for tuning in. For Rebel News, I'm Adam Soos. Hey, to ensure you catch all of our exclusive content and remain informed on the race for the leadership of the United Conservative Party, make sure to check in regularly at ucpleadership.com.